Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
Today, we are going to be continuing a conversation about university hunt programs. We have our four guests rejoining us, Dr. John Eady, Dr. Kevin Ringelman, Julie Nguyen, and Maddie McFarland. And we're going to continue what has been a very exciting conversation. We're going to hear some more about the experience that each of these individuals has had throughout this hunt program. And we're looking really forward to getting into it. So John, Kevin, Julie, Maddie, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Good to be back.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, now I want to talk to Maddie and Julie. This is the part that I'm most excited about, and I hope our listeners are as well. We just had to have Kevin and John on as the necessary precursor to all this kind of stuff. But now we really want to have fun with the discussion that matters the most, you might say, is the experience of the participants in this. And so, Maddie, I'm just going to start with you. And I want to allow you to tell this story as you want to. I don't want to ask you too many questions about it, but let's just start with your range of emotions as you went through the program. Generally speaking, are there certain aspects of it that stood out to you most, that were that you found most rewarding? Let's just start there.
Knowing what I know now and having been through the student hunt program, I sometimes look back at my initial view of hunting and harvesting wild animals, and I feel almost like ashamed or embarrassed. When I came into the wildlife program at LSU, my view on hunting was I'm not against it, but why would I participate when I can just buy my meat at a grocery store? The idea of taking an animal's life seems so foreign and almost cruel. And, I mean ashamed now, because that's such a disconnected viewpoint to have, to not want to know really where your food is coming from and how you get that food is a huge disconnect, I think, that a lot of people have, especially with hunting. So I think the biggest thing that came from the hunt program for me was a whole new perspective. Not just on hunting and how I feel about it, but about where my food comes from. I make more conscious decisions now, even when I'm at the grocery store, just because I've had this experience. And I think another emotion that has been really prominent for me out of this whole experience and the student hunt program at LSU is this sense of pride and being proud, not only of myself, but my younger sister just recently graduated LSU, and she went through the same program as I did. And she went through the student hunt program with Dr. Ringelman as well. And my sister is a pescatarian, so she only eats fish and seafood. And she still took that leap, to hunt. And like Dr. Eady said, with some of the vegans who have been on the hunt, is that she has this whole new perspective too, where she would be open to consuming meat if it's wild harvested, if she knows where it's coming from, especially too, if she's the one who harvested. And LSU put together these videos called Preserving the Hunt about the student hunt program, and she was featured. And I remember watching those videos and just being so proud, because this is another thing that I have to bond with my little sister, and knowing that she went out there to do something so foreign to her and shot a limit. That's just a big proud sister moment,
So she shot a limit. I have to ask if you shot a limit too.
There's a little bit of jealousy there, because I have yet to shoot a limit, but my feeling of pride for her overshadows that for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. So what about the act of pulling the trigger on the bird? I know as a hunter, and I would imagine most every hunter has had this experience at some time in their life, where they're recognizing the conscious decision that they're taking to take the life of another living animal. And so there's a moment of reflection there, even for the most seasoned hunters. And occasionally I go back to that place, that time, did you kind of have that moment as well? Were you, I don't know if you were hesitant the first time you saw a duck, did you hesitate to pull the trigger? Were those thoughts running through your mind, anything of that nature?
That really came to me after I had already pulled the trigger and we had the bird in hand. You do have this moment where you reflect on it. You know, what does that mean for you to have taken something's life for the first time in your life? It wasn't easily overcome at first, but you do develop this sense of respect and honor for what you're taking from the environment and how you're taking it. And you just, it basically manifests itself into a deeper connection of your surrounding environment, and why you're there.
And Julie, now to you, talk about your experience going through this program. Any particular aspect of it that was most meaningful to you, or that you were most uncertain about going through? What did this mean to you, and how has it influenced any aspect of your life since then?
I'm going to be grateful for this program for forever for a variety of reasons. But like I said before, I'd never grown up with any kind of hunting or fishing background. And like Maddie said, I knew relatives or distant friends that would hunt, but I kind of just felt like, one, I didn't really feel like it was for me. And also it wasn't as accessible to me. So it felt very intimidating getting out there. But the ease of this program in allowing me on my first hunt means everything to me, because I have developed this relationship with my stepdad, who is and was an avid hunter. So I remember after shooting my first teal and having that great weekend, sending pictures off to my mom and stepdad, and him just immediately calling me on the phone, and just the excitement that he shared with me, and not just knowing that I had this education background in hunting and management, but that I actually did it. And he works up a lot in North Dakota, and going through this program has helped me build this relationship with him, where we now take yearly hunting trips together. And that's something that's just me and him. And it's so important to me, because we get a couple of days to a week of just being with one another and hunting with one another, and just, it's an emotional thing, I think. And I have to thank LSU for giving me this opportunity, and the gentlemen that we hunt with up in North Dakota always give me lots of praise in my muzzle safety and bird identification and stuff like that. They're thoroughly impressed with me, but I think to me, it just means so much that I have this connection with my stepdad that is just something that me and him do together annually.
Julie, that's a very special and personal experience and story that you've just shared there. And so I thank you for that. One thing I can say to our listeners, just share with y'all kind of what we're doing here. This is, we're actually using Zoom video to help with this podcast episode, because we have so many guests on it. And so I can tell you that this is by far the episode that I think will hold the record for the biggest smiles of all the participants that we're going to have. So just hearing Julie and Maddie tell the stories, I'm looking at John and Kevin and actually myself, and we're all just kind of smiling as we hear Julie and Maddie tell these stories. And I think that does just reflect how special these experiences are, the connection that we develop to the resource. So Julie, have you found, you're working as a consultant now, have you found that this experience benefits you? You've talked about how it benefited you personally. Have you found that it benefited you professionally as well, in conversations and discussions, and maybe the way you relate to other people that are your clients or other colleagues?
Definitely. And not just clients, but like you said, colleagues as well. It's really nice to have that base level of understanding and being able to share experiences about hunting and, oh, what did you do this weekend? And, things like that, where I just have a deeper connection with the people that I'm talking to and working with.
Kevin and John, a question for you. We've talked about these programs as both introducing our next generation of professionals to hunting, because that's a very important constituency, but then also as a way to recruit new hunters. and I'm going to ask you, get you guys' opinion on this. This is maybe, I don't know if we'd say it's a debate, but it's certainly a discussion within our field a lot about whether someone needs to be a hunter in order to be a competent wildlife professional. And so I just want to get your thoughts on that. Kevin, what do you tell your students in terms of, can you be a successful professional in this field if you don't hunt? And so, just want to get your thoughts on that and how it relates to the course that you're teaching here.
Absolutely. I think that there's a great number of wildlife biologists, conservation biologists that are non-hunters, and they will forever be non-hunters. The number of those individuals who are non-hunters is likely to increase, and those are facts, right? That doesn't take away from their skill set and their perspectives that they bring to the table. On the other hand, it's still valuable to have a hunter worldview and a hunter voice in that conservation and management conversation, right? And so, I'm not one to read the tea leaves here, but to me, the future of waterfowl and wildlife conservation more broadly, the pool that we're drawing from and the people that are successful in moving into the profession are urban and suburban women, right? And so that merely that shift in demographic makeup and the perspectives that they bring means that the face of wildlife management is changing. And the goals and policies and the strategies that are implemented in wildlife conservation are going to reflect that changed worldview. I think our job as educators is to recognize the changing face of our profession and try to bridge the gap between sort of the historical context of wildlife management, which was very hunter-centric, and bring in the new faces of wildlife management and provide them with that worldview in order to carry us forward in the next 25 and 30 years of conservation.
And I appreciate what Kevin said. And absolutely, you don't have to be a hunter to be a conservation biologist. There's lots of perspectives and skill sets to bring to the table. I think my personal experience, and one that was actually quite surprising to me, we would take kids out in the marsh and we would get them dirty. And I used to think just that mud on the boots was enough, that just getting some of that, down and dirty experience. And then I realized actually the harvest is a really important part of it. Not so much they have to be a hunter, but they have to understand that they're going to be working with hunters if you're working in the waterfowl and wetland world. I get Kevin always teases me about my cheesy sayings, but the actual commitment, when a student pulls the trigger, takes a bird, that's a commitment to the marsh. And I say that we take, it's an oath. We take from the marsh with gratitude, and so we must give back with generosity. And I think there's too much intellectual conservation where people intellectually buy into it, but they're not giving anything. And they're also not taking anything. So there's not that personal investment. And I think one of the things, and there's many ways to get this, but one of the things that hunting does is it provides a direct commitment and a value to you of being involved in wetland and waterfowl conservation. It means something to you other than just an intellectual activity. It's a visceral activity. And I had no idea how powerful that was until I saw that with the students. So I think that's a really important educational component. And then the other thing, and Julie and Maddie spoke really eloquently about this, just that decision to pull the trigger, to take an animal's life and all of the emotion and thought and discomfort that goes into that. I applaud your courage in doing that. I mean, you didn't come into this from a family perspective, and it wasn't gradual. It was a conscious decision on your part, and that's a really tough decision. It's really hard to make, and I think when students go through that process, they learn something sort of fundamental about themselves, and they know that they can make those kind of decisions, and that carries over into so many other aspects of life, not just sort of the hunting side. So Mike, I'm sort of giving you a two-sided answer. No, I don't think you have to be a hunter, but I just realized the empowerment of those experiences, and you've heard it beautifully from Julie and Maddie, of how that experience can change your perspective. And I think it opens the door. That opening the door is key. The one other thing I'll say, Mike, sorry, I'm going on a bit too long here, but for my students as well, one of the reasons for the camp is I would see them go out and they would get jobs. And they would be, working in a check station or somewhere, and a hunter would say, well, do you hunt? And if they said no, the door kind of closed a little bit, because the hunter is going, well, you don't really know where I'm coming from, and I don't know what your thoughts are. You could be an anti-hunter, whatever. as soon as you say, yes, I have, that door opens. And then that person now knows, okay, you know where I come from. I don't have to explain myself to you. You understand my passion, my commitment, my history. And even if you don't do it yourself, you understand that. That for me, as a wildlife professional, is an important part of their education. So I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's absolutely empowering.
Thank you, John. That was well put, and I appreciate that perspective. So, Julie, I want to go back to you now, and we heard John talk just a minute ago about this visceral connection that hunters and hunting gives us to the resource. And that goes beyond just the resources, whether it be political resources or financial resources that the hunters may provide. It also includes their role in habitat management, direct management, either as a property owner or a leasee, in sort of an indirect role in providing a motivation for that habitat management to occur. As you went through this, Julie, did your recognition of that direct and indirect role of hunters with the habitat management side of things, did it change? Did it grow? Did you develop any new appreciation for that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we touched on it a little bit before, but just kind of everything that we had learned about in classes leading up to this was kind of more of a textbook style. But whenever we got to experience this and really be out there with these really great people, it really kind of clicked for me. I gained that appreciation and a better understanding. And it was really great also to me to see the respect that the hunters had with the game and the environment. And it just is so special whenever you're in it. And that's not ever something that you can get from a textbook.
What was your impression with respect to their knowledge of the resource, their knowledge of the habitat? A lot of times we think about, well, the only way you can really understand waterfowl or any kind of issue is if you get formally educated about it. But I think a lot of times we don't give enough credit. I think someone earlier in this episode mentioned this. We don't give enough credit to the people that are actually out there on such a regular basis. What they see, their observations actually help educate them. Did that come off to you just as to how knowledgeable these individuals were about the resource?
Oh, absolutely. We were out with some of the best guides in the state, and just the way that they could identify a bird way, way up in the sky just by the way that it was flying or the slight shadow that it made, over the water. It was really incredible to see that kind of experience and the knowledge that they had to the resources.
Maddie, what about you? I know you grew up in South Louisiana, so you're very familiar with marshes and a lot of the work that goes on there for various reasons. How did your appreciation or recognition of the role that hunters play in habitat management change or grow?
I think grow is a really good word to use because I don't think you really get the opportunity to fully appreciate the skills that these landowners or guides have, the types of perspectives that they form from being out there every day and observing until you can experience it yourself and, take a morning to be out there in the blind with them. Our first land managers or wildlife managers in the country were observers. It doesn't matter, how many years of school I go through, what degrees I have, these people that spend their lives out there in the marsh will always have way more knowledge, a much better understanding than I ever will.
I think that's a great point, and I think it's a reminder that they can bring very valuable information to a lot of these discussions. So, Maddie, I want to ask you, you and Julie, actually, I'm going to follow up with each of you here. Just sort of, what was your overall favorite part of this entire experience?
I'd have to say the camaraderie of it all. I got to hunt for the first time in the blind with my best friend and my mentor, Dr. Ringelman, being able to share that first sunrise and the birds coming in, that excitement right before you pull the trigger with people that I really cared about and admired was probably my favorite part. And not just in that moment, but for the years that have followed afterwards. I've had the great opportunity to hunt now in 5 different states across the country. And that all began with this common thing that I have with the people I've hunted with, that we enjoy being out there, that we appreciate the wildlife that we're hunting, that we respect the environments we're in. And that has led to a number of amazing experiences that I owe to my mentors and the people who have dedicated their time to take me out and, help recruit me into the sport and continue the passion.
Maddie, I want to follow up on that just a bit, because we asked Julie a question earlier in this episode about how this may have influenced or enhanced any of her professional aspects now that she's working as a consultant. But you're still in graduate school, so you just talked about how this experience introduced you to new opportunities, maybe it enhanced some of your networking of friends around the pursuit of hunting. But professionally, have you noticed that it has opened any additional doors for you, or do you think it will kind of going forward?
Oh yeah, I would say for sure. I think what Julie and I offer in our experiences is a pretty unique perspective, in that we didn't come from the traditional hunting background like some people put it. And yet we've had the opportunity to experience it and to merge it with our outlook and our schooling on wildlife management. So we almost straddle this line between two worlds that I think is really beneficial when it comes to creating or fostering a connection or partnership with a landowner or another wildlife agency or land management partner, in that we can understand each other on a different level, or make that connection to where, people are a little bit more open to your perspective or to your insight when they know that you can relate to something or relate to them on something that is so meaningful to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Being able to relate, being able to understand, it advances those conversations regardless of the nature of them. That's an outstanding point. Julie, what about you? Your overall favorite part, or maybe there are multiple parts of this experience?
I would say the best part of the experience would just be that feeling of coming full circle. I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but just that click between things we learned in the classroom with the physical experience. And it was a culmination of everything we learned, and kind of just a relief feeling that wrapped up the past 4 years of our studies. And also, obviously, the connection I have with my stepdad now is extremely special. And that's something I'm very grateful for, because I'm sure for him, coming into someone's life at 16, 17 isn't very easy to do. So the bond that we have now as the shared love for hunting is super priceless to me. And it's just kind of funny when I think back on it, because I never thought I would be so excited to go to middle of nowhere, North Dakota every year. But here I am, just excited and ready to cherish those moments with him.
I guess I want to give Julie, you and Maddie, give you an opportunity to provide any final comments about your experience. And I guess one thing that I might ask you, if there's someone listening to this that's maybe a little bit reluctant, or maybe they're uncertain about hunting, maybe it's someone that has the opportunity or is going to have the opportunity to go through one of these programs. If they're a little bit reluctant to that, what might you say to that person? Julie, let me start with you.
I would say that, first of all, I definitely understand the hesitation and the nervousness to go into something so new, but it's really great. And I would definitely tell them to take that plunge, because it's going to open your eyes up to what feels like an entirely new world, and will really help in a multitude of ways. It's going to help in any future paths that you have, because if you stay in this field, and even if you don't, if you're in an area where hunting is common, just being able to have that common ground with someone and to be able to relate to them on something at this kind of a core level, I think is really important, and is a skill that you can only get from doing it personally.
And Maddie, any final words from you, or any advice to people that may be considering this?
Yeah, well, for the advice, I would tell anyone to just keep an open mind. Just like when you're trying anything new for the first time, always keep an open mind, listen, learn, what somebody has to offer you in a whole new experience, like Julie said, can benefit you in a multitude of ways. And I can't stress that enough, how like I said, as cliche as it sounds, how life-changing this experience has been. And I would just like to express my deep appreciation for everyone who has benefited, or who has contributed to this experience, especially Dr. Ringelman and Dr. Edie, for putting in the time and effort to provide this experience for first-time hunters. And, when it comes to recruiting new hunters, it really takes that time and effort, commitment from experienced hunters and individuals to make that experience last through the years.
Wow, Julie and Maddie, that's just that just makes it so worthwhile to hear that from our perspective of what you got out of this and how you spoke it so eloquently. I'm super impressed and delighted and honored, and also honored to be on this podcast with you guys. It's just amazing.
Yep, you two make me proud. You know that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, that really means a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to talk to you guys. It's been wonderful.
Very nice. Very nice. And so Maddie and Julie, thank you two so much for sharing your time, sharing your experience, and sharing your thoughts, and some of which it sometimes had a rather emotional connection to it. And certainly appreciate you sharing that, not just with me, but with everyone that's going to be listening to this. I know it's very valuable, and it's going to be enjoyed by everyone that listens to this. So thank you very much for joining us.
So thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so John, I want to go back to you now. We've talked about a lot of the fantastic experiences and sort of emotional transformations that a lot of the students that have gone through this have had. Have you had anyone come out of the program with, let's say, a worse impression or a more suspicious view of hunters and hunting than when they started?
No, and it's been amazing. We're 12 years in. I was telling you before the podcast of a story of a student in our very first year when we did it, and she was in a blind, actually with Paul and Sandy's nephew, who was the guide that day. And Paul and I, when we do the camp, we go around and visit each of the students and see how well they're doing. And she was sitting there, and she looked quite sort of overwhelmed. Tyson was, sort of had a stack of birds. He was showing her how to hunt very effectively, and I thought, this is. It looks like this didn't work for her, and I'm going to be hearing about this. And after the hunt, and asked her how to go. She said, "Oh, it's fine." So, did you find it upsetting? Yeah. Well, it's a lot to think about. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's good. And went through the whole quarter, didn't hear anything. I was expecting to get a call from her parents or something. Well, I did get a card just before, or actually just right after Christmas, and it was a Christmas card with a picture of her and her dad. She's holding a green-winged teal and a new shotgun. And she said she went out with her dad for the first time. He bought her a shotgun for Christmas and shot her first duck. And the card was "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Teal." And it just, that was the only time that I think maybe one other student who decided after she shot her first bird, she chose not to. And that's totally cool. That's fine with us. And those have been the only two instances where there was any sort of, and I wouldn't say it's negative, Mike. It was just it takes students different amounts of time to process this. And this is a really courageous decision for them. They're going to this place of, discomfort, and they're pushing through it. And that's hugely important part of this whole enterprise. So yeah, it's been astounding. It's been astounding.
So John, that experience you just described, where you played a role in that person's relationship, maybe advancing, maybe strengthening or expanding that person's relationship with their father. I know you and Kevin, you as well. You two are among the best in terms of professors, graduate student advisors, in terms of investing in their lives personally and professionally and educationally. But how did that experience compare, John, where she replied to you and you could see this expanded relationship she had with her father? How did that compare to any other reward that you get from education and training in your normal day?
This is a huge, sort of a wonderful profession as it is. But Mike, there really is no comparison. At the risk of being cheesy, I'm gonna relay a saying. I used to think just getting the kids out in the, sort of in getting them dirty, and that would be sort of transformational for them. It isn't. The hunting part is really critical. So I have the saying, if you'll forgive me, and I don't think I said this earlier in the podcast, but mud on the boots, blood on the hands, skin in the game. That we won't sustain what we don't care for. We won't care unless we get value from it. We can't value what we don't know and haven't experienced. And it used to be the blood on the hands is an integral component of it. I think it's that sort of connection and that ownership that really is transformational for them. And you just can't get that in any other type of teaching experience. And I just realized through this camp, and it's been transformational for me, that there's no other way. I mean, the marsh is the only teacher. The Mother Nature is the only classroom. You just cannot get that across intellectually in the classroom. And so you don't even know, as that example shows, and as Julie's experience, for example, shows, of all the other sort of aspects of this experience in their personal lives, their connections with relatives, with friends, their own personal growth, it's been absolutely mind-boggling as an educational experience for me. I haven't had it. Yeah, nothing compares to it.
Kevin, what about you? You've been participating in these hunt programs for fewer years than John, but have you, I guess two things. Have you encountered anyone that came that left the program having a worse impression of hunters and hunting than they did before? And then is there any particular story that stands out to you along the lines of what John described, where you see this emotional change or this some sort of expanded relationship with either a friend or family member of some of the people that have come through the program?
Sure, Mike. So I can't recall any student emerging from our program having a more negative view of hunting when they went in. I've been in the blind with students where when they shoot their first duck, they're really distraught over the experience. I mean, it wasn't a clean kill, had to shoot it again on the water, and that was just very traumatizing for someone who's never experienced that before. And she had a hard time sort of moving beyond that for the rest of the hunt. But she was a student in my lab and worked for me for more than a year. And she sort of internalized that, I think, as part of the process, part of what it means to participate in the food chain. And so I think she didn't have a negative view of hunting, but she came out transformed. Understanding where protein comes from, I think, was a real eye-opener for her.
That's a big thing. And I think we have to realize we're now working with a different constituency. I think Kevin's experienced this as well. So the kids that are doing these camps, we did it. It was, as part of a sport. It was something that we enjoyed doing. It was an activity. For a lot of this generation now, they're really interested in the process of, as Kevin said nicely, procuring their own protein. I love eating duck. Absolutely. No question about it. That's a big part of it. But for them, I think it's almost a bigger part, being part of the food chain. And it's a little bit of a different mindset. And I think we as wildlife professionals, as we're thinking about, R3 and recruiting new hunters and recruiting new professionals, need to be aware that there's a different perspective, I think, that the younger generation has about the role of hunting in society. And I think these camps also play an important role in doing that. I think Kevin said that nicely.
Kevin, I want to come back to you and ask about something that I know I've seen come out of LSU related to your program. It relates to social media. And I know as your students go through this, pretty much all your students now are going to have some sort of social media presence. Oftentimes it's going to have a presence on multiple social media platforms. So just from the participants alone, there's an opportunity for that social media reach to be achieved. But LSU and the people that helped you with this program actually developed a series of videos. Share with our listeners about those, and then where could they look those up?
Sure, Mike. Well, let me back up just a second. The way that our students use social media in the marsh on these hunts is intentional. So we cover this in hunter safety as how to be ethical hunters, right? When in the day and age where you're posting pictures for hundreds or thousands of people to see, you need to be cognizant of what your image is portraying of hunting, right? So we're beyond the age of throwing bloody deer on hoods of trucks and stuff, right? And so that can portray hunters in a negative light to non-hunters. And so we're very intentional in providing our students guidance with what is appropriate use of social media on these hunts. And the result has been very positive, right? So all of these students who are going into the marsh, who are taking pictures of a dog making a retrieve, of sunrise over the water, of their friend's first duck, those images are being shared with a massive constituency, with universally positive branding for hunting as a fun youth activity, right? And so I think the reach that we can leverage through social media is really important. And to your point about LSU picking up on this, we have a very supportive university and administration for this program. And a couple of years ago, they sent out a photographer to one of our student camps in Shreveport and took some phenomenal pictures. And I think he came back to LSU and his department with a lot of positive stories to tell. And so this past year, they sent out videographers to several of his hunts, and not only documented the hunts themselves, but came into the classroom to get the perspective of us teaching them about ecology and wing identification, and then post-hunt reflections with the students. And so it's a 3-part series. It's available on the LSU Public Relations website. You can find links to it on my faculty websites. But they're really well done, and I think that they do a good job of documenting not just, duck hunting doesn't end with the kill shot, right? It's the before, pre-harvest, and it's how you reflect on that experience afterwards that really makes it the full experience.
And I can attest to the quality of those videos. They are very well done. So I would encourage our listeners to spend a few minutes searching for those and watching them. They're maybe 3-5 minutes in length, something of that nature?
Yeah, they're short, but it's a good way to kick off 15 minutes when you're supposed to be working.
Hey, you can even kind of consider it educational. There's nothing wrong with that. I also like very much what you said about or the deliberate nature of the way you talk about and you discuss as a class proper use of social media. It's almost like that should be an introductory class in every department on campus, I would imagine. So, but yeah. Great job for you for thinking about that and incorporating that into the course. What about other, and I guess, Kevin, I'll direct this to you. What about similar programs at other universities? Are you aware of those? What's there? How widespread is this kind of hunt program becoming in the U.S. and Canada, if you know of anything there?
To my knowledge, it's sort of expanding exponentially. So there's this growing recognition that introducing the next generation of conservation stewards to hunting has immense value in terms of their education. And so programs have emerged at places like Clemson and University of Delaware, Mississippi State, Colorado State, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, just to name a few. I think there's somewhere on the order of a dozen to 20 programs that are in some form of development or action. A lot of those are being supported by Delta Waterfowl. They hired an individual, Stephen Sowell, to actually manage their university hunt programs. And so it's a nationwide effort on their part to sort of provide this opportunity for university students with the recognition that not everyone can have the LSU model where we do it through the academic institution. There's a really important role for NGOs and others to play in supporting these sorts of endeavors.
Kevin, that's a natural segue to the last question that I wanted to ask of you and John, and that's really to give you an opportunity to acknowledge all of your co-authors on your paper, but in that larger in a larger view, all the partners that are critical components of this. So, Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a long list. Top of the list for me are my colleagues Brett Collier and Luke Laborde. And in terms of the university organization and implementation of this, we are co-equal in this regard. We all put in a lot of work to make it happen. This is, of course, in collaboration with Larry Reynolds at Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, who's been there from the beginning and sort of moved it into this private lands partnership that we have. And of course the landowners, right? And the club managers, Richard Lipsey, Randy Haney, Terrell Brown, Paul Dixon, John Childs, John Barton Jr., Chip Mossberg, Mac Bullock, Lauren Kleinpeter, Tanner and Doug Jones, all of the hunting clubs and their staff that provide our students with a meaningful experience. I mean, these are hungry undergrads, and they're thrilled to just get a really good hot meal for a couple days on these hunts. So it really is a large collaboration that's required to bring this to fruition. And so we've been lucky enough to have support of those folks, as well as forge some unique partnerships. We had support from Delta Waterfowl, but also with Merlina Outdoor Incorporated, Jason Hart, who provides our students with some of the camouflage and hats and things like that they just don't have. I mean, we can't outfit 35 students in camouflage. That's just not an option. So I think there's a growing opportunity for corporate sponsorship in some of these, and we're happy to send them pictures of students enjoying themselves in a hunt in their branded gear. So I think there's room for opportunity there as well.
And John, the same question to you. I want to give you an opportunity to acknowledge all the partners that are involved in your program.
Well, thanks, Mike. First, can I make a plug for a video we didn't do? UC Davis didn't do it, but Jay Goebbels from CWA did it. If anybody's interested, he did one in one of our very early camps. So it's on YouTube. It's just California Waterfowl / UC Davis College Hunter Camp. Has about 250,000 views now and only 23 dislikes. So I guess it's okay. But it's actually, and the reason for pointing that out is one of our early hunters, Georgia Ramos, is just absolutely eloquent. She's just like Julie and Maddie, and just to see, this experience through their eyes is really, it's fantastic. So I've got to tip the hat to Bob McClandress, who was the president of CWA, and is now an adjunct at UC Davis, was my co-conspirator in this, and so he and I were really sort of working, and then Paul and Sandy Barnerson, who basically provided sort of the facilities and the financial support and all the other support to make this happen. And then, ours is a different program, as we've talked about. It's not run by UC Davis, it's run by California Waterfowl. So huge thanks to those guys. I mean, without a private partner dealing with all the gear, the programming, George Oberstad was their coordinator, Taylor Byers, in the last couple of years. Just unbelievable the amount of work to pull this off in a single weekend. And then Jake Meserly at CWA. So those folks having a private partner NGO. Paul is the past president of Ducks Unlimited. So you've got the two big NGOs, duck NGOs involved. It's just phenomenal. And then all the guides. I mean, that's the other thing that just blows me away is here are all these people, really high level waterfowl professionals, giving up one of the primo days on a weekend, during the end of the season when hunting's really good in California and we finally get some weather, and they're giving it up to spend the morning, in the blind with a first time hunter. There's a long list of them and they keep coming back year after year. I can't go through them all, but huge tip of the hat to all of them for helping move our profession forward in what I think is a really creative and important way, an experiential basis for our growth.
This has been outstanding, and it's been a phenomenal story. And I know going forward, it will continue to be a phenomenal story with the continuation of the hunt programs here going forward. And so, John, Kevin, Julie, Maddie, I just personally thank each of you deeply for the time that you've given to this. And also, John and Kevin, thank you for the time that you spend and that your partners spend in this very important endeavor. And so this has been great. I know our listeners are going to like these episodes. And so thank you so much for joining us here on the Ducks Unlimited podcast. Thanks so much, Mike.
Appreciate it.
We extend a very special and very warm thank you to all four guests that participated on each of these episodes related to the University Hunting programs. We certainly hope you have enjoyed their stories, their experiences. I know I have. We thank all the participants and all people involved in these University Hunt programs across North America. As always, we thank our producer, Clay Baird, for the great work that he does with these podcasts. To you, the listener, we hope you've enjoyed these episodes, and we thank you for your support, passion, and commitment to wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.